Hey, how you doing? Hey,
I'm sorry. Good morning.
good morning. How are you?
Fine. Let me make an announcement. If you have a cell phone, would you turn off the Wi-Fi on it, please? Because we're all sharing. Go to airplane mode. I've turned mine off because we're at the victim of the restaurant's Wi-Fi. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning.
Yeah, that seems to be a little better. We're trying to get a better Wi-Fi signal. Is this your iPad?
Yeah, it's my iPad.
He just connected this up. We just tried it a couple days ago. It looks very good.
Okay, well, it does look good.
And are you hearing us okay?
I'm fine. I've got my Bluetooth headsets on and no feedback. Everything's working.
All right. Let me show you the room here. You said you wanted to see what was going on. We have
Yeah.
about we have about 25 people here.
Wow, that's a big group of people there. Yeah. See some people waving. Yeah.
That's it.
Looks like
That's it.
looks, looks like you have your own T-shirts too.
Absolutely. If you play your cards right, you might get one, you know.
Yeah.
Well, let's learn a little bit about your background. I was telling people about your family in the grocery store. How'd you get involved in all this?
Okay. Well, when I was a Cub Scout, 8 years old or so, I got interested in radio. Let me start a little bit further back than that. In the well, my great grandfather helped build the Transcontinental Railroad
There you go.
back in the late 1860s. And there was a gold rush, the railroad. After that, there were no jobs, and a few moved down to Mississippi. And there's a region of Mississippi that's called the Mississippi Delta, which uh, goes from the northwest corner of Mississippi, where Memphis is, along south to about 200 miles along the Mississippi River to Vicksburg, Mississippi, and out to the east about 60 miles. That's where the river, Mississippi River, overflowed and flattened everything and left a rich deposit of soil, and there were lots of cotton plantations. So back in the late 1860s, 1780s, there was a group of Chinese that came down here to work as laborers. And since they came all the way from China, it didn't take them long to decide that that's really not what they wanted to do. So they opened up these little grocery stores to serve the people that worked on the plantation. And this was not long after the Civil War. Before then, there were slaves, and they had their own country stores. And these were the stores that the Chinese uh, had, took those places. And that whole few generations of Chinese all had little grocery stores. And these little grocery stores are like the ones that I grew up in. And if we can just take a minute, can I show them a drawing that my nephew did
Yeah, sure.
where I grew up? Let's see if I know how to
Change
flip.
cameras.
Yeah, if I get this right. Back camera.
There you go.
Did it switch? Yeah.
Yeah.
I, I have a drawing that my nephew did who grew up with us in this same store. Can y'all see that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you guys lived in the back of this grocery store.
Yeah, we lived in the back of the store, and my father died when I was 6, 7 years old. I had a sister who was much older than I am, 22 years old. But she and her husband came to help my mother and me and my brother, who was a year younger, my little sister, 4 years younger. And they had a family, and at one time there were 11 of us that lived in the back of the store.
Wow.
I know y'all are not as old as I am, but you can see some things. I don't know if I'm going to try to point right here. Can you see that
Yeah.
little looking thing? That was what we call a coal oil tank, COAL, kerosene, and we used to pump kerosene into a gallon jug that people used for lamps,
Oh, for lighting. Yeah, yeah.
for lighting. They didn't have a lot of. There were some people still that did not have electricity. This is back in the early 1950s, 1960s. But
Wow.
I was in the Cub Scouts, 7, 8 years old, and one of the projects was to build, and I'm sure a lot of y'all did this, build a crystal radio, with wire wound on a oatmeal box, and
Yeah.
this was a foxhole crystal radio where we used the old rusty razor blade and a piece of pencil lead and headphones, and you could pick up AM radio station. At least other people could pick it up. I never could get mine to work.
But nonetheless, you decided you liked to fool around with radio.
Yeah, I mean, I kept tinkering ham radio. I didn't know anything about, tinkering with radio, and read all the books that was in our little school there. But I didn't know anything about ham radio until one evening I had built this transistor radio, and laying down in bed in the back of the store, no air conditioner, mosquitoes everywhere. I mean, it was just hot. But I had this one transistor radio I was listening to, and I could hear stations from all over the country. But all of a sudden, I heard somebody break in, and it sounded like he was having a conversation. And this was AM on 80 meters, and there was a local ham radio operator and our local radio TV repairman. And I went over to see him to buy a resistor or part as an excuse to go see him, and found out he was a ham radio operator, and he kind of took a little interest in it, and I just went and worked for him for free so I could get the parts. And he actually got the parts out of an old television set and helped me build a 20-watt transmitter using an 807 tube. I know I'm talking so far back, nobody knows what 807s are. And
oh, there's a lot of people here that do, believe me. So but you didn't have a license yet.
No, but I did get one. I had a license before I had the transmitter. I had to wait a long time to get the transmitter. This was back in the days when there was a novice class, and
1 year.
Had for a year, and you had to use crystal control. And I remember I had 2 crystals for the 40-meter band, and back then you transmitted on one frequency, and you just kind of tuned around to see if anyone could hear you. And it got pretty frustrating because you could hear these stations, but they were just not close enough where you thought they would be tuning for you. So I used to take these crystals apart, and you could take a pencil lead and rub on the crystal, and it would lower the frequency. You get lowered a few kilohertz, or if you were brave enough, you could take some sandpaper and sand it down and raise the frequency. I was brave enough to sand some of those crystals down, but when I did, it wouldn't oscillate anymore.
Too much sandpaper.
Yeah. But you had to do it really evenly, and I didn't have any way to sand it evenly.
All right, so you got your transmitter. When did you be getting an idea of selling equipment into this ham business?
Well, growing up in a grocery store, back then, lots of people were in their own business. They laid bricks, had shoe shops, and fixed TVs, and so that was a common thing. That's how we grew up. So I knew at some point I was going to go into some kind of a business. And as kids, you're always trading stuff. And I used to fix people's radios and music amplifiers. I used to take these old radios apart that the radio TV repairman gave me, took the parts out, and I would use these parts to fix these radios and music amplifiers, and then I would overcharge these people.
Because your cost of materials was zero.
Yeah. But anyway, that's, just wanted to be in some kind of a business and just combine those two together.
And so when was MFJ founded, and what were your early products?
Well, I was always selling something, and when I went to, after I finished high school, I went to Mississippi State University. The Mississippi Delta is on the west side, halfway down the state of Mississippi, and Mississippi State University is directly across on the east side, all the way on the other end of the state, about 150 miles. But when I left high school, I went to Mississippi State, got a degree in electrical engineering. Then I went to Georgia Tech, got a master's degree in electrical engineering. And then my brother wanted me to come back and run the store for him for, 6 months or so. So he could just take off and just travel a little bit. So I had always worked at the store, but what we did was put up the drinks and sweep the floors and stock the shelves. Never really ran it. But when I went to run it, all of a sudden, it just gave me the keys and, told me to run it. So I learned everything. I learned how to sell stuff. I learned how to take care of people. Learned about cash flow. Learned about inventory control. I got my MGS degree while I was working in the store, which is the Masters of Grocery Stores.
You're a many-degreed guy, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's go forward to the electronics, though, too. So when did you start selling stuff?
Okay. But after I finished doing the little stint of running the store, I went to work during the Vietnam War, designing military electronics up in Fort Wayne, Indiana, Champaign-Urbana. And I met a bunch of engineers, and my plan was to get these guys to do the actual work, do the design, and because I was going back to Mississippi State to work on a PhD. I got a call one evening from a professor asking me if I wanted to come back to work on PhD because I had some money, and I said, yeah. I really didn't want to work on PhD. I just wanted to get back home. But my plan was to start a engineering design company, which I called MFJ Enterprises, because I wanted to do more than just design stuff. But they're just doing stuff for research departments, just designing circuits. There wasn't enough work, so I ended up doing all the work myself. And I found out pretty quickly that all I could do was all I could do. Just couldn't get much bigger doing everything myself. So I decided that it'd be a lot easier if I just designed some products and have some other people make them. And the first products that I wanted to do because I knew how to design active filters from working and also just taking some graduate courses. So I came up with a CW filter and a sideband filter. These were active audio filters using, at that time, brand new operational amplifiers. And I kitted them, made everything, made the PC boards, etched them, drilled by hand, rented a broken down hotel room in downtown Starkville. Paid 50 cents a day, $16 a month. That was the perspective. And used this hand drill in a holder and sitting there drilling holes in PC boards and had a Pyrex dish that had ferric chloride over a hot plate, heating it up, etching the PC boards, and I was writing the ads, taking the orders, doing everything. And after a few months, the guy who rented the room, it was a broken down room, no bathroom, room he couldn't rent to anyone else. I think he was just pocketing the money, but I think he got scared. Plus, we were thinking up the place.
Oh, the chemicals, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that's how I started selling products. And it didn't take long before I figured out they didn't really want kits. They wanted something that was already wired up, and so I started building them and then started putting them in little boxes. And I was teaching classes at that time, and I used to walk into my classroom with these bags of parts, would wave them around in front of my students and say, anybody want to put these things together for 25 cents a piece? That was MFJ's first production line.
You still employ child labor, do you?
Well, we try. Kids nowadays don't want to work. Too much free stuff.
Getting more into ham radio, what was some of the early products you had?
Okay. Well, the first thing that we found out was they wanted, our fellow hams wanted plug-and-play products. So I went down to Radio Shack and got a bunch of boxes, little aluminum metal cabinets. And then I had to put hose in there for the slide switches and the phone jacks and the terminal strips, and well, you couldn't drill them because you could never get the hose in the same place. And it didn't look right. So I went down to our local tool and die shop and had them make me a punch die set. And it was basically two pieces of half-inch steels, one on top of the other steel, so that I could take the little aluminum cabinet and slide it into it, and there was a hole pattern on top, which was for the slide switch and the phone jacks and stuff. And we had these little steel punches, and you would drop the steel punch into that slot, and you would take a hammer and you would hit that steel punch, and it would knock a nice clean hole in the same place every time. And there were 11 holes in it, and I hired a student, and his whole purpose in life was to stand there and hit that hammer all day long.
But it worked.
Oh, it worked really nice, and we made some silk screens up, and we silk screened them, and it was a nice little product. But then in the grocery store, that's where I learned how to be really, really cheap. So I didn't want to spend more money on tooling, so what limited us And the kind of product that we had was hoe pattern in that little box. So I could make products that would, I would leave a hoe off, just use the same hose, but just leave some of them off, and so I could build products that would have products that looked almost the same. So we built products like electronic keyers, like crystal calibrators, like VFOs. Let's see, we had an antenna tuner that had that same pattern. So we had a series of 7 or 8 products. And I spent a whole summer with some of my student workers, and we designed and tooled up 7 brand new products and ran a full page in QSC magazine. This was like November 1975 or something like that.
And what was the response to the ad?
Well, we sold some of those products, but the real sales came when we brought out our first antenna tuners and ran, and we were the second ham radio company to have, back then was a toll-free watch line, which we ran across the top of the page, full-page ad, selling this new antenna tuner, and we sold more stuff in that 1 month than we did in that entire previous year.
Wow. Wow.
And we still have a good dealer that started with us back in the early days, that was from England. And he would always tell me that we would ship all these products, and for packing material, again, in as cheap as work, I would go to our local Starkville daily newspaper, get all their old newspapers, use it for packing material, and kept up with Starkville from those newspapers.
Talk about operating cheap. You told me something very interesting earlier this week when I said, don't you want to get stuff made in China because it's cheaper? And you told me you actually have figured out a way to be as cheap as China. How was that?
Well, what we did was we had a lot of employees, and I wanted to keep everything here in Starkville. So what we decided to do was to automate everything that we could do on a small production scale. We transferred a lot of the large production techniques to small scale production. You can't sell a whole lot of any one thing in ham radio, so you have to have a lot of different things. But things like we used to build a product using through-hole technology that is taking the parts and put them into the PC boards by hand. Well, we switched over pretty early on to surface mount technology to take labor out of that. And we went from pantograph type of punch presses to CNC and then to computer control punch presses. So, and then we went from hand soldering to wave soldering. So the way that you get cheaper product from China is by having too much labor here. And you have to have at least 25% of your product cost is in labor. So we reduced our product costs down to about 12%. So we can now produce the product cheaper, and we can buy products from China. We can't make them as cheap as they can, but once you add all the transportation costs and all the duties and stuff, we can do most of that stuff here in Starkville cheaper than we can buy them. And there are some products that we can't, things that have a lot of plastics in it that we can't, so we have to go over there and get those done in order to compete.
But for the most part, you're able to do it all in Mississippi.
Yeah, at least 90% of our products are made right here in Starkville.
Wow, wow. What's your all-time best-selling product?
Well, it's the series of SWR analyzers that I was, and I'll show you some of this is a different building now, but when we first started, the first building I bought was a old skating rink, which went out of business and had become a juke joint. And it had closed up, and we bought that. But anyway, we converted that into a production area, and I had an office with a workspace in the back. And I had been working on trying to figure out some, these antenna bridges that you use to measure antenna resistance. Well, I was trying to figure out a way to measure antenna resistance without having a bridge. Just read it on the meter. And all of a sudden I thought to myself, well, heck, I can just read SWR in the same way. And from that Sunday afternoon, I came up with the idea of the SWR analyzer, started building that, and we had a whole series of SWR analyzers. Even to this day, those are our best-selling products. Before they, our best-selling kind of product, the whole series of antenna tuners.
Well, I have the SWR bridge and some of your antenna tuners as well. So I'm one of those people that bought the most popular stuff. Can you flip the camera around and show us your little workroom around the side where you actually test out the new products?
Okay, this, see if I can turn this back around. Okay.
And sideways if you can.
Okay. Let me walk in from the front door. Can you, to show you, give you a perspective of where, okay, I'm coming in the front door and you can see my office. And this is kind of a big mess. Somebody was telling me they had seen my desk like this on a YouTube or something on the internet, and they came back 2 years later with a new picture, and the same pile of stuff was still in the same place. But I'm going to walk around here, and you can see around my office are lined with bookshelves with books. I'll show you my collection of radios, but as I walk around to the other side of my desk, there is a bookshelf that separates one side of the office from the other. As I'm walking around here, now my workspace looks worse than my desk. Stuff is just piled everywhere. And, but, I just sit here when I get an idea and test out the concepts to see if it's feasible, if the idea works, and once I make sure it all works, then I can turn it over to someone else to do the final circuit design and lay out the PC board and design the cabinet. And this is something I was playing with for a while. That's a vacuum tube transmitter with a VFO on it. Just stuff, it just looks like a junk room in here.
How many employees do you have?
We go from 130 to about 150.
Wow.
We're spread out over 4 buildings. Each building does a different kind of manufacturing. There's the building that I am in is the MFJ building. This is where most of our offices are, and the county and human resources, stuff like that. But it's all related to MFJ, and we do the electronic manufacturing. That's where we do surface mount technology, and anyway, the small electronic manufacturing, and then we have a building on the other side of us. I'm trying to turn this back around. This thing working? Can't turn this. We have a building.
Martin, I'll tell you why you're doing that since you got the camera that way. Show the top shelf of your office, some of the equipment you have there.
Okay. This is a collection of radios that I had, most of which are, well, you know, lots of people like to collect top line stuff. My collection are the low-end novice type, the radios that I wish that I had when I was growing up as a kid. I'm just now able to start to buy some of this cheap stuff. They came from Hamfest, from eBay, places like that. This receiver right here is a Helicrafter S40, which I had after a while. This is a HRO50 that one of the local hams gave me. Right above that is a Heathkit antenna tuner. You can see some Drake equipment, Drake 2B. Here is one of the first, that's the first Heathkit transmitter. As we look around, you can stop your light if you want to see. At the Harvey Wales antenna tuner. There's some Helicrafter receiver and transmitter.
Does anybody have a question for him at all?
Question?
No, I was just trying to see where everybody was here in the room.
Okay, there's some wires right here. This one. This piece right there, that is the first transistorized piece of ham radio equipment that was made. This is back in the 1950s. And then on this shelf here, there's more stuff. I know y'all kids are too young to recognize any of this stuff. This one that's wrapped in plastic here, it looks like a transceiver. It's made by Gonset, but that is an AM transmitter and a separate receiver.
So it wasn't a transceiver, it had separate transmit and receive in the same box.
Right. That's right, separate transmitter and receiver. If you have, I'm not sure how, maybe it's stuck on this mode. Okay, here we go.
Okay, yeah. All right, is there anything else you'd like to add about MFJ or what you're doing, Cushcraft?
Okay, I was just saying the building on the same road as we are, but down the street it manufactures the Cushcraft antennas and the high gain antennas, and then across town we have another building that does all the metal work. There's computer control punch presses for making cabinets, machine shop for making the parts. We make roller inductors and capacitors. We punch out the plates. We make the bearings. We make all the parts so we can make our own capacitors and roller inductors, you know, the radio type parts. And then we have another building, which is actually three small buildings together that manufactures the Armateur equipment.
Two of those companies were heading out of business, and you bought them. High Gain was failing, right? And Cushcraft?
Yeah. That's really what we like to do, is to go in and find someone who's retiring or have retired, and then we'd like to bring them in and build it back, because, you know, they spent 25 to 50 years building up a customer base. Lots of folks have their products, and they have a whole line of products. Why let it go to waste? Let's bring them back and let people in future generations enjoy them. I remember that when I was a junior at Mississippi State, I had let's see, I forgot what it's called now. It's the Cushcraft AVS. What's that 40-meter version? Anyway, it was a high gain trap antenna. Well, somebody help me. The 40.
Was it a vertical?
Yeah, it was a vertical.
High gain? No, they were thinking about the dipole. So we can't help you either.
Okay. Well, anyway, I had one of those as a junior. I mean, that was 50 years ago. Very good working antenna. And we still make those antennas, and we have all the parts for them.
Wow.
This is Armateur calling. Is he active?
A question here is, are you still active, and what's your call?
Okay. My call is K5FLU. That's K5 funny looking underwears.
And are you on the air much?
I'm not on the air very much anymore, but I still get on the air. I have a station at home, have some antennas at home. What I like operating is HF Mobile.
Yep.
And sometimes I drive around town, and one of my favorite antenna, nobody else's, is a antenna vertical that's mounted on the back of on the bumper of my car. It's a 5 feet tall, but it has a 6-foot top hat on it.
Gigantic. Doesn't it fall over?
I think the connection dropped out.
Yeah. You hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
Doesn't it fall over with that big hat on it?
No, it stays up there for a while, but I can't get in the garage, so I have to, I just can't use it very much.
All right. Any other questions about MFJ or the product?
Any new products coming out?
Yeah. See, I told you we'd get to ask this question, Martin. Any new products coming out you want to tell us about?
Well, there's several new products coming out. Of course, that new line of solid amp, the new ALS 1306, which includes 6 meters, but full power on 6 meters. Most of the other antennas only have half power on 6 meters, and this is computer controlled. It's got all the bells and whistles on it. And this one is a secret, so don't tell anyone. But we're bringing out a let's see, the ALS 606, which is in addition to the 600. That's about half the power, which also includes 6 meters. There's several new things we're working on, some new antennas, and I don't know, there's just a whole group of them they're working on. They work on them so far in advance that I can't even tell if they're new or not anymore because I see them so often.
All right, anybody else before we let Martin go? Well, Martin, it has just been an absolute pleasure for me to talk with you over the last few weeks, and for this today, and I'll see you at Dayton.
Okay, well, I hope to see all of y'all at Dayton. Y'all have a good weekend.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.